I'm standing in the study of 48 Doughty Street in Bloomsbury, and I'm looking at a fairly ordinary mahogany desk. But there's something very special about this desk. It belonged to Charles Dickens. Tucked in the bay window of his country home in Gad's Hill in Kent, at this very desk he filled page after page of a story of intrigue, deception and revenge. He called it Great Expectations.
Ours was marsh country down by the river, within, as the river wound, 20 miles of the sea. My first and most vivid and broad impression of the identity of things seems to me to have been gained on a memorable raw afternoon towards evening. At such a time I found out for certain that this bleak place overgrown with nettles was the churchyard, and that the distant savage lair from which the wind was rushing was the sea, and that the small bundle of shivers growing afraid of it all and beginning to cry was Pip.
The story begins with young Pip being plucked from the marshes of Kent and installed in London to become a gentleman. But what I didn't know was that Dickens actually wrote two very different endings. In his original ending, Pip and Estella just bump into each other on the streets of London and then go their separate ways. But the published ending sees Pip and Estella reunited in the ruins of Miss Havisham's house. What I want to know is why Dickens changed the ending. He's 48, he's got 12 best-selling novels under his belt, he's at the height of his powers. What causes this crisis of confidence at this stage in his career? That's what I'm going to find out. But to understand why he did it, first I need to find out how he did it. Well, it turns out that wasn't so hard. I'm used to a book being a book. But back in Dickens's day, novels came out in parts, tantalising instalments in periodicals and journals. And Great Expectations came out like this, in a journal called All the Year Round. So I think if I can find out more about this publishing process in Victorian England, it might help me begin to piece together this story about the ending change. So I'm going to go and talk to Professor John Drew at the University of Buckingham, and we're going to start by looking at the manuscript itself.
He often liked to use blue paper.
Why was that? Do we know?
Just a habit of his, and a particular colour of blue ink. These are the slips.
So we're looking now at the facsimile of the manuscript.
That's right. And once these arrive at the printers often put a line across individual pages in order to chunk it up for the compositors.
And can you just explain what a compositor is? Because, of course, in the 21st century, everything's digital. We don't have... Do these roles even exist anymore?
Well, a compositor was an extremely skillful craftsman who selects little blocks of movable type and very, very quickly set up type in reverse.
In reverse?
In reverse.
Every word they set backwards all the way...
Within a tray that can then be locked tightly shut so that none of the movable type falls out.
Wow.
Extraordinarily quick work and quick-witted work. And I think you'll agree that Dickens's handwriting...
It's indecipherable. I mean, I can see Orlick, and I was looking at another page and I could see Camilla, who Jo nicely refers to as Mrs. Camel at one point, which I think is lovely. As a compositor, you obviously had to be a very good handwriting reader, didn't you, as well?
And thus we get an interesting intervening stage, a necessary intervening stage, which is the point at which the compositors set up what's called a galley proof. And those galleys come back to the editorial office for correction.
Proofing, as we do now, you take it through and make sure there's no mistakes.
Absolutely. So there is, in addition to the original manuscript of Great Expectations, there are these little fragments of galley proof which tell you how Dickens revised at that final stage of copy editing.
And do we
his
have
own work.
access to those?
We only have little fragments of them. These are galley proofs of the first two endings that were set up in type.
OK, so both endings were set. The first ending wasn't just an idea, he actually wrote it and was about to publish it. But suddenly it gets dropped and another one put in its place. I want to know why.